Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm very excited for today's video. I'm going to be sharing with you my fall palette rotation slash bin. I'll hold it up for you for a minute. We've got a lot of palettes to talk about today. I recently reorganized my palette organization and I have 5 separate bins. I have one neutral palette bin, and I mostly use my neutral palette bin for days that I want a neutral look. Maybe I'm going to work and I don't really want to think about creating a look from a palette that, you know, maybe I can only use a few shades for work. I don't know what I'm really saying right now, but I can easily reach into my neutral palette bin for just quick, easy looks. Then I have 4 separate bins, one for each season. And I thought it would be fun each season to kind of come on and share what palettes I have put in that bin for that season. And some palettes can rotate, I might have a fall palette that I also want to use in the winter. So when I curate my winter bin, when we get to winter, some palettes may transfer over. I don't know if that's making any sense at all, but I don't even know how many palettes that I've pulled for my fall palette bin. I definitely feel like I have the most palettes for the fall, or that kind of fit the fall aesthetic in my opinion. And I'm gonna share them all with you today. So if you're interested in seeing what palettes I personally am pulling for the fall, stay tuned. First, if you haven't yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I'd love for you to consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Before we get into it, pause the video, let me know what palettes you're pulling out for the fall so that, you know, maybe I need to squeeze a few more palettes in here. Who knows? Okay, we can start with the Natasha Denona palettes that I pulled. I pulled 3 midi palettes for the fall. I also thought about pulling in the Biba and the Gold palette, but I was out of room. I was out of room. And this doesn't mean I'm only gonna be reaching for these palettes. This is just my go-to bin if I'm wanting to shop my stash for fall palettes. So these are my fall Natasha Denona palettes. Up first, I have the My Dream eyeshadow palette. I feel like we know the aesthetic for fall is typically we got grungy vibes going on, maybe something similar to what I have on today, greens, earthy tones, but I also, you know, I like to dabble in the mauves in the fall time, kind of deeper mauves, and I felt like this kind of fit that aesthetic. Kind of has that rosy pink sort of leaning situation happening. What am I saying? Am I even awake? But I like specifically this quad of shades is just screaming fall time to me. So I wanted to pull that one. This is definitely not a favorite palette of mine, but I have curated different Natasha Denona midi palette situations, and right now this is what my Zendo looks like. It's a mixture of, I think, quite a few shades from the Sunrise. So this isn't necessarily the actual Zendo palette, but I'm pulling in this curated midi palette that has a number of different Natasha Denona shades from different midi palettes. Again, am I even awake? But this is what this is looking like. So definitely interested in pulling for that. And then I have the Yucca palette because this is just screaming grungy greens in my opinion, but you can also make this lean more neutral. There's just so many fun looks that I want to create with this palette, and I cannot wait to reach for this one this fall. Then I also pulled the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. These warm honey tones, especially for a more neutral look or a work appropriate fall look. I feel like this is the perfect situation. I really am interested in creating something with this shade Honey. I love yellows, and I've definitely been getting more into golds this year as well. So I'm actually really excited to pull this palette, and I might end up pulling this as one of my picks for my for my No Pan Left Behind, just because I'm really, I don't know, something about this palette is really drawing me to it lately. I feel like this one kind of goes without saying. This is the Unearthly Fall Magic palette. Yes, it has my greens, it has my purpley mauves, and it has so many beautiful, amazing shimmers, shifty shades. This is such a beautiful palette. I believe I reached for this one kind of last fall and created a couple looks that I really loved with this one, and I'm very excited to dip in and play with this one again. Okay, I was thinking that I might leave this one out because I recently No Pan Left Behind the Tiny Marvels palette, and I feel like this one is one that I can kind of put in my fall bin, but also I feel like this is very fitting for spring with the pastels. The reason I pulled it back into the fall bin was for this shade right here, and then I created a look using like this top row and layered fire butts with scarab, and I loved that look, and I want to create it one time for the fall. I don't know if it'll be like a pumpkin patch day look. It very well could be, but I at least want to reach for this one time in the fall because there is a fall specific look that I look forward to creating with this. Aside from that, I don't know how much more I'm going to reach for Tiny Marbles, only because I've already completed it No Pan Left Behind style, and I would like to not end the year with 50 plus palettes in my collection as unused, but definitely gonna reach for that at least once. Okay, also pulled out my Pat McGrath Sublime eyeshadow palette, and I'm gonna be very careful when opening this one because I did have a bit of a casualty that I repressed, and like a bunch of the shade kind of like made this blue shade messy, but this blue shade is quite a disappointing shade, the most disappointing shade in this entire palette. But this quad of shades absolutely screams fall, especially this like red duochrome. It's like a red green gold sort of shade. It's so beautiful on the eyes, and I cannot get myself, I have not been able to get myself to declutter this palette, so I need to No Pan Left Behind this. I should tell myself if I don't No Pan Left Behind this 6-pan palette this year that I have to declutter it. We should say that, so I should get that done in the fall. Should we talk about my Odin's Eye palettes next, because I have quite a few. I have the Stone and Rock eyeshadow palette, which is the green, the very like jewel tone green sort of situation. Again, we have like the grungy greens. We have this really beautiful green, one of my favorite greens in my entire collection, High Spirits. And there's just something about the fall that brings out the green in me. So I have that, and then I have these three, and I feel like these three kind of go without saying. I have the original Hella palette, and then I have the Little Ghost palette, as well as the Trick or Treat palette. I am so excited to pull out Trick or Treat again for this green right here. I freaking love that green. It is so pretty, and I feel like I'm actually getting pretty close to pan in this shade right here, so it'd be fun to actually hit a pan in this. But there's so many other fun fall looks that I am excited to create with this palette. Again, we kind of have like those deep burgundies. Cannot wait to play with this. The Little Ghost palette, I recently No Pan Left Behind it, kind of in the wrong season, but I definitely wanted to pull this one out again to play with it a few more times in the actual season that I would want to use this in. Not that you have to use your makeup seasonally, but this is literally a Halloween themed palette. Definitely there is a blue and yellow look that I created last year that I loved so much, and so I'm thinking maybe for like a Chargers game, not that I'm like a huge Chargers fan, but I'm not a Chargers fan. Like, I'm not a fan, but I don't dislike the Chargers. Thinking maybe I will do, you know, a blue and yellow look for the Chargers this football season. And then we have, again, the original Hella palette, which looks like this. Lots of greens to play with, as well as I'm very excited to create a look using the shade River and, is it Compete or Complete? And Complete. Definitely want to create a look using those. All of my remaining Melt palettes I will be pulling to use this fall. I feel like Melt Cosmetics just gives a fall vibe in general, but we have the Melt Gemini palette. Again, those really beautiful, like earthy, grungy tones. I definitely need to No Pan Left Behind this palette too, because I neglect this palette so badly in my collection. So I definitely want to get some good use out of that. Then I have the Bad Side Zodiac Earth palette, which looks like this. Again, this just really screams fall to me. We have this deep, like teal sort of shade. We have this deep purple, we have some really fun like yellows, and then this really beautiful materialistic shade. Oh, that one is so pretty. It's this really beautiful bronzy shade. Very excited to play with this palette. I really enjoyed my time using that palette when I first got it. And then I'm also gonna pull out Melt Smoke Sessions for a green moment. Specifically, like these 5 shades are giving fall, in my opinion. So we'll definitely be pulling this. I definitely want to do, ooh, maybe I should try and do like a nail polish situation with the shade Mean Green. I feel like that could be a really fun, like deep green situation. I might actually, like, I feel like I want to try that possibly right after filming this. I'm gonna set that aside. Okay. Ooh, the Fantasy Cosmetica Druid palette. I am so excited to play with this fall. I absolutely love these two like special duochrome shifty shades. They're so pretty. We've got some deep burgundies. We have a fun bronzy shade as well. And then we have this like poopy green sort of shade, which I feel like is so fitting for the fall time. I have two ColourPop palettes that I'm gonna be pulling. I'm pulling Lil Ray of Sunshine as well as the Wild Child palette. Lil Ray is just a 9-pan all matte palette, but these scream just like pumpkin patch fall aesthetic in my opinion. I'm thinking of like, I'm thinking of literally sunflowers. Are sunflowers more of a summer flower? For me, I'm thinking of sunflowers at a pumpkin patch. So that's why we're pulling that one. And then something about the fall just screams like deep, warm brown sultry to me as well. So I definitely wanted to pull Wild Child to fit that vibe. From Glaminatrix, I will absolutely be reaching for the Nocturnal palette, which looks like this. There's even a shade in here that says Witching Hour, which I feel like is perfect. This whole color story just screams almost, I don't want to say Beetlejuice, but maybe it's like the purple, like the periwinkle and the, again, kind of like poopy green sort of shade that are like giving Beetlejuice in my mind. I'm probably the only one, but something about this, just the theming of it screams fall. Obviously, it wouldn't be a fall palette rotation if we weren't reaching for the Basic Witch palette from Bella Beauté Bar. I'm definitely interested in picking up their Strange and Unusual palette as well. I saw that that was recently restocked, and there's like a bright neon in that palette that just is screaming to me. The rest of the color story of that palette is not necessarily like my perfect vibe, but we know that Bella Beauté Bar makes such a great special shade, and I love the purples and the green aesthetic that this one is giving. For the warm browns and the green earthy tones, I'm also pulling the Nomad Cosmetics Okavango Safari palette. And then for Menagerie, I thought that the Killer Purr palette kind of fit a fall aesthetic as well. Maybe because my mirror is broken, it's giving spooky season. But specifically like this row, there's something about, I don't want to say like the murkiness. What is the word I'm looking for? I don't know, but also these two shades, the mustard yellow, yes, that's giving fall. Okay, also pulled out the ABH Nuevo palette. I really like this palette. I feel like, is it desaturated? It's almost like these like grayish, it's not desaturated, but like almost like a little bit of like a grayish hue to some of the shades, like the shade Liberty. But I mostly feel like all of the like shimmer shades or the like lid topper shades in this palette are just the perfect aesthetic for the fall season. So I thought I would pull that. I have a couple of Huda Beauty palettes. So I have the Naughty palette as well as, or the Naughty Nude, as well as the Empowered. The Empowered palette is definitely giving kind of like that warm brown sultry sort of look. This palette definitely goes deeper, which I really appreciate. And then there's some like purpley, almost like gray purplish tones. I'm saving the grunge palette for winter. I really just didn't have a lot of room left in my fall palette, and I felt like that one definitely fit, in my opinion, a winter aesthetic for me. But this one, I do like that you have some of the grayish purples. I feel like that is kind of fitting for like spooky season. And then I also have the Naughty Nudes. This one, it definitely leans more towards like the burgundies, and then you can, you know, obviously play around with some of the pinks in here too, but I felt like this was a perfect palette to pull for the fall as well. All right, I have two Adept palettes that I'll be pulling. I have the Adept Heather Austin palette. This screams fall in my opinion. We've got the burgundy. We also have, again, kind of like this deeper green matte shade, which is so pretty. Kind of like a mustardy shade, almost like a chartreuse though, because there's like a bit of green happening in that. And then obviously we have the amazing Adept shifty shades, special shades. Very excited for that. And then also pulling the Ninhydrin palette, which is just so fun. There's so many fun special shades in this, and I like that some of the special shades just go a little bit deeper. I'm very excited to play it with this shade right here specifically, as well as these two shades down here. But I really definitely do want to No Pan Left Behind this palette, so looking to do that in the fall time. Then I have the Alter Ego Artemis palette, which if this doesn't scream fall to you, then like, I don't know what would. We have like the, almost like the pumpkin-y kind of orange. So we have some of the oranges, browns, bronzes. We have some of the earthy toned greens. And then we have these fun pops of like blue teal shades as well. I have not reached for this palette enough, especially lately, so I'm very excited to use this as well. I don't necessarily want to commit to no pan left behind this because there's 28 shades in it, but I'm super excited to create some looks with that. I'm also pulling my Glam Light Chocolate Martini palette. One, because I did create a look with this on my way to a pumpkin patch. Like, there is a look that I loved that I created. Can't remember if it was a cider fest or a pumpkin patch, but I loved the look that I created, which left a really good impression in my mind for this palette, but I neglect this palette so hard. So I do want to no pan left behind this one for sure this year. And I just feel like the tones in here, maybe it's just because I reached for this on my way to a pumpkin patch that this is screaming fall to me, but I do want to reach for this one in the fall. All right, I have one last non-new palette to share, and then I have a couple new palettes to share, and then we're finally done. But I have the Kaleidos Flower Punk palette, and for me, it's really like, take out the 2 mint shades, which I don't love. This, to me, like, this is a fall look, and this is a fall look. There is a look that I create using these 3 shades that I love so much that I will recreate with this palette over and over because it's just one of my favorite looks. But also the grungy greens, this like limey chartreuse shade, I cannot wait to reach for this. This is one of my favorite Kaleidos palettes. And I feel like this is very fitting for the fall. All right, then we're gonna wrap it up with 4 new palettes to my collection. So the Ensley Rain Flutter palette is just like pure special perfection of like fall in my mind. I think that basically all of the shades, take out these 2 shades, maybe this one too. Like, this is just gonna be like a grungy fall. Oh, I literally cannot wait to reach for all of the special shades. Golden Hour, I feel like, is gonna be such a fun one. Kind of just giving like a special shade, but like grungy fall. We have like our burgundy in here. We have a deeper kind of mustard shade. I'm so excited to play around with this palette. Then I also have the Cosmic Beauty Neutrals palette, which, I mean, this really could fit summer as well, really any time of the year, but something about like this red shade Desire, I feel like is just kind of giving fall. We also have Glitz. We have kind of like a mustard shade as well, an Icon. Then we have some just neutral brown shades. We have a green here. Can't wait to continue to play with that one. And then I have 2 more Ensley Rain palettes. So I have Cosmic Dreamer, and it's really like this lower half of the palette, or even like just these 2 rows, because this I'm like could be more winter. These 2 rows I am so excited to create looks with. This fall, I just, again, the grungy green murkiness and the combination of how special the shades that Ensley Rain does, I'm so excited. And then finally, I have the Ensley Rain Groovy Gardens palette. I have already no pan left behind this palette, but it would be a disservice to this palette to not reach for this in the fall. Everything about this screams fall to me. I'm so excited to create a look using Lava Lamp, this fun red shade, because I don't typically reach for reds, but like, we gotta reach for Lava Lamp this fall, as well as just the rest of the tones. We have some like lighter tones that I feel like would be really fun, and then we can also go really deep as well. And then we have a full row of special shimmers, especially Ensley Rain shimmers. So, whew, those are all of the palettes that I have pulled for that I would love to reach for this fall season. Again, I would love to know what you're reaching for. I would love to know if you're like, girl, why are you pulling that palette out for the fall? That doesn't make sense. Let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.